I replaced all my Lululemon shorts with Bird Dogs. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing, but fit way better. They actually look like khaki shorts, so I can wear them all day for my morning hike or bike ride to the bar. I can't stop wearing them. Join over 1 million guys who discovered the best shorts on the market. Go to birddogs.com/MLB and enter promo code BASEBALL for a free baseball hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/MLB. Promo code BASEBALL for a free hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
What you watch depends on what kind of mood you're in. Sometimes you're craving comedies like Friends or South Park, and sometimes you're more into dramas like HBO's Succession and House of the Dragon. There's also cooking shows like Chopped and Beat Bobby Flay, and even movies like The Lord of the Rings and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Well, Max is the streaming destination that has the best of entertainment for whatever mood you're in anytime. And plans start at as little as $9.99 a month. Max, the one to watch. Subscription required. Visit max.com.
In studio for the first time as we head into the long summer months here before training camp. But I'd imagine long summer months, I imagine it's got to feel pretty good for the guys to get a little break here. Nick Caserio, Texans GM, joining us in studio. It's good to see you, man.
Good morning. Good to have us here.
Yeah.
Great to be here in your plush studio.
Palatial studios, yes.
Nick, you know what happened? We used to be across the hall. You can see all those, see all the nice natural light.
You actually have a view of the city. We were just talking. You can see the bubble from here, but now you guys are looking at the wall.
We have a wall,
so.
yeah.
Right. So it turns out, like, we had a boss who thought, like, boy, Seth's mic just doesn't sound right. His voice is too loud, so we need to get in somewhere where there's more soft surfaces. So we moved into this dungeon here, and then it turned out all that was wrong was that we needed new microphones. So we moved everybody across into this dungeon, and it turns out that we could have stayed over there in the nice one.
And this story actually has a page.
Hopefully your bosses aren't listening to this. They're going to get mad at you.
No, they know. We've talked about it on the air. No, and the reason the mics were broke, here's a Patriot tie right here, because Ted Johnson kept spraying Lysol on the microphones. Is that what you taught them in New England, Nick? Is that how you taught them to take care of their technology? Yeah.
That was before hand sanitizer, I guess.
Yeah, so. Well, it was pre-COVID, yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, we had somebody else that would rub hand sanitizer on
yeah.
the microphone.
Oh, yeah. So before we get into the football talk, I don't know. I know you listen in every now and then, but I don't know if you heard me tell this brief story before, because when we got this interview lined up a few days ago, and maybe this shows my obsession with work. I don't know what it shows, but I had a dream 2 nights ago of this very moment but you were in studio, not here. You were in the studio at NRG, not in this studio. So it was the beginning of the interview. The DX music played. I brought you on the show. I asked you a question. You answered it. Seth asked a follow-up question. Your answer was short, though. It was a very short answer, and I didn't have a new question ready to go. And you know how sometimes in your dreams you panic, like in a moment like that?
Sit there in silence?
Yeah.
Nothing?
No. In a fit of panic, I asked you how Michael Brantley's shoulder was doing. So, Nick, how is Michael Brantley's shoulder doing?
I'm the medical expert. Yeah. So, Get Dana on the show. I think Dana and Dusty will. Actually, I did hear the exchange that Dusty had, so that was very amusing. So, at least we're not the only ones that don't want to talk about injuries. yeah, that's good. Do you watch that sometimes?
Okay.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. Everybody has a different philosophy about how you want to handle that. I think, just generally speaking, philosophically, really what you're trying to do is you're just trying to protect the player more than anything else. Yeah. Because sometimes you don't really know what the prognosis is and how long it may or may not take for that player to recover. So what you don't want to do is say one thing, and then it's a moving target. So really, you're just trying to protect the player and do what's right by him. It's not that you're trying to be confrontational or difficult. It's just sometimes the information isn't as clear as everybody would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Nick, I'm glad you said that, because Sean and I were talking about this off air the other day, and we never got back around to it. But in the case of Lance McCullers especially, I went through a situation in my career where I had a lot of complications with one specific surgery, and the Texans kept it quiet for like 9 months. It wasn't until I'd had surgery in like October, and round about June or July, it looked like I wasn't going to be ready for the regular season. And honestly, it was like emotionally like emotionally and physically trying time for me that entire offseason. And that was like not having to address it publicly. I think went a long ways. Like, cause you gotta process these things in your own time. And I think as an executive, you gotta be conscious of that. Even every guy's gonna be different, but you just never know how it's gonna affect guys.
Oh, Seth, it's hard when a player is injured and then let's just say he goes on injured reserve. There can be some dark, difficult days. So sometimes less is more, and you want to give that individual sort of their privacy in their personal space and let them kind of deal with it accordingly. If you're talking about it, what happened, when's he coming back, it just could potentially create some expectation, put some pressure, and quite frankly, it might be something personal that player is dealing with that you don't really want to divulge. Going back to what I said here originally, you're just, from a club perspective, you're just trying to protect the player, which is the most important thing that we can do. Sometimes we understand everybody's looking for information, everybody wants answers, and we're certainly cognizant of that fact. But when, from an individual player perspective, and you've been in situations, I'm sure, Seth, where a player is injured and he's not even a part of the team, and that has a mentally draining effect. So what we've tried to do, just with injured players, generally speaking, that are going to be out for an extended period of time, is try to keep them as engaged as possible because they're dealing with a lot. They're dealing with a lot in the building. I'm sure they have a lot of pressure outside of the building. How you feeling? When are you coming back? There's a lot of things that are going on. So that's where there's the personal element that we have to be conscious of within the context of, we know it's a business. Everybody realizes that. But you also want to be protective of the individual and kind of their personal space.
Nick Caserio joining us in studio, Texans GM. So how's the first offseason been working with the new head coach, the new staff, the rookie class? Where are things at right now?
Yeah, I think from February till now, we've made a lot of progress. We've had a productive, say, 3-4 months. I would just say specifically with DeMeco, I mean, you can see why he's as revered and held in high regard by, I would say, former teammates, former players. He's a great dude. We've had a great working relationship for 4 months. Not everything is perfect. There's going to be some bumps in the road that we have to deal with. But he's so consistent day to day. His messaging is clear. The players understand what the expectation is on a day-to-day basis. And he has conviction in his beliefs of what he wants the team to look like, what we want the team to look like. And we have a lot of conversations about everything. And it's a two-way street. And there's certain things that he has strengths that, I don't have and vice versa. So the goal is anytime you have these types of situations is to be complementary to one another and understand when to give the individual space, when you maybe need to insert yourself or make a comment or commentary about that. But candidly, I've loved being around him just for his consistency, for who he is on a day-to-day basis. I've learned a lot from him. I think it's been fun. Not that you want to learn a new defense every year, but it's been fun learning the intricacies of the defense, how it's coached, what's the philosophy behind it. And then when you see that or you hear the explanation and then you see the application on the field and you see the players sort of buy into the philosophy of what we want to look like on defense, I mean, that says a lot. And we have a lot of work in front of us. There's still a long way to go, but really enjoyed working with him. Can't say enough about him, who he is. And the staff, I'd say, has done a great job of working with the players, putting a foundation in for the players. Really what we're trying to do in the spring is get everybody ready for training camp. Because that's the first true litmus test that we're going to have. Because even in the spring, you can't work on a running game. So if the running game is going to be a big part of your team, which it's going to be offensively, and then we have to do a better job against the run, I mean, this is like no mystery. But if we're better in the running game on defense, it puts the offense in some hopefully more advantageous situations. So overall, I think the players have worked hard. They've had the right attitude. I think there's a certain competitiveness and edginess that each individual player, some of the players commented about that. So I think we're excited about where we are. We also understand that there's a lot of work in front of us. But to this point, I think everybody's enjoyed just the opportunity to be around one another and work with one another.
Nick, when you're talking about learning that defense, it's funny. Yesterday, I showed Sean a screenshot of an article out of San Francisco in 2021, October of 2021, when it said the 49ers need to abandon the wide nine defense immediately because I think they had just lost to the Packers or something. And the defense went on to be a top 5 defense, and this last year they were one of the top 3 defenses in the league. Obviously,
like a knee-jerk response, like all the Astros fans right now that are losing their minds for a team that's like 2 games out
Circle
of
of
first
trust.
place.
Yes.
So.
Well, you talk about learning that defense. I played in a similar defense 1 year in college, and we've told our listeners, like, when you hear wide nine, just think about the defensive ends are cocked out wide and they're just coming hell-bent for leather into the backfield.
Which isn't true, but go ahead.
Well, sometimes it's true. That's how you first sell the defensive end on it, okay? Before you teach them everything else. But when you talk about, like, okay, different defensive philosophies or different ways of going about things, when you're learning this with DeMeco, you guys are getting to know each other over the course of the last several months. Do you try to just, like, consciously identify when, like, oh, okay, we disagree on this. Like, let's identify it and, like, talk our way through it and just at least identify it so you know that it's there, and then just hope that between the two of you just to figure it out along the way?
Good question. I think it's really more curiosity from my end. I would say we're really not two disagreeable types of people. So it's really more watch, listen, and then if you have a question, hey, what are we thinking on this? Can you explain this to me? And a lot of it is just, what I'm trying to do is get an understanding of how we're playing so that when you're evaluating the players and you're evaluating the team, you kind of have a better understanding. So from that perspective, it's been kind of, invigorating to kind of see that. I mean, football is football. There's only so many ways you can do certain things. You kind of have your base foundation of how you want to, base everything off of. But how they shift the tight end, you motion across a formation. What are you going to do with the front? How are we handling the front? What's the communication? Are we balanced? Are we going to handle it a different way? In the secondary, okay, what's this call mean? What's this term mean? Okay, how do we play in that? Okay, if they do this, what's the adjustment off of that? So from my perspective, what I try to do is learn as much as I can about what's going on defense. I would say just when you're coaching or when you're looking at a team or evaluating a team from an offensive perspective, really what you're trying to do is understand as much as possible what's going on the other side of the ball. Mm-hmm. How are they playing? Because you're going to build your offensive game plan accordingly. It's not just, it's three, okay, it's all three is three. Well, it's really not. So how are they playing it? How are they matching it? What are the principles? And vice versa. When you're on the defensive side of the ball, you're trying to learn as much as you can about what's going on offensively, about how they're playing. So I'd say more than anything, Seth, it's really been good dialogue, good discussion, have a question, or if you see something, go to Meek, hey, what are we thinking on this? Okay, or Bobby, on this play, what are we thinking about? So it's been good. So what I've tried to do is listen more than anything, but I love football, enjoy learning, enjoy the aspects that going into understanding football, because then my role is to be able to take that information and hopefully disseminate that to our staff when they say, we do this, what are we asking them to do? Or what are we looking for in this player? What are we looking for in this position? So that's where that kind of synergistic approach, where I kind of be able to go both sides between understanding what we're doing on the football coaching side and then be able to take that information and relay it over to the scouting staff so we all have a clear understanding of what we're trying to build.
When life gets crazy busy, and when doesn't it? Walmart helps you keep it all together, now with a little help from Instacart. If you need your groceries now-ish, but your options for going to Walmart are later-ish or never-ish, you can get everything you need delivered through Instacart right to your door in as fast as an hour. Skip the shop and savor more of your crazy busy life with Walmart and Instacart. Visit instacart.com to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply.
Looking for an adventure? Find yours in a Toyota. Like a Camry with stylish design and a reputation for reliability that can't be beat. Or go with a Corolla, both affordable and capable. With so many trims and features to choose from. Or check out the new Crown, presenting you with luxurious style and elegant amenities to make your day a breeze. No matter your adventure, Toyota has you covered. Visit buyatoyota.com for more. Toyota, let's go places.
Nationals baseball is in full swing.
Strike 3 called. He got him looking. That's 10 strikeouts for Mackenzie Gore.
With the free Odyssey app, local fans can listen live all summer long, whether you're at the grill or at the pool.
Going, and gone. Goodbye. C.J. Abrams, a grand slam.
Nationals baseball. Nationals announcers streaming live on the free Odyssey app. AUDACY. Get in the game and download it today.
Nick Caserio in studio with us here on Sports Radio 610. DeMeco has been very high in his praise for Will Anderson so far throughout the offseason. It's easier, I think, for the regular folks like me to be able to look at a practice like you guys have been having with no pads. And when guys are around the ball, you go, CJ threw a nice ball. Look at that nice catch. Nice breakup by Sting, that kind of thing. What are the things that that Will Anderson is able to show without pads on that have DeMeco, and I would imagine people in the building so high on Will right now?
Yeah, most players in the spring, what we're trying to do, and there's limitations in terms of what you can do, Sean, like you said, there's no contact, so we have to limit the contact. I mean, one of the things we've had to do with Will is actually slow him down because he just plays with his hair on fire every play. But any player, what you're looking to see is, are they doing the right thing? Are they executing the technique? Are they using the right fundamentals? Do they understand their assignment? And if there's an issue, can they make the correction so that it doesn't happen a second time? So that really applies to all players, and that's when we're going through the film after practice, what you're looking for. Say specific to Will, he's really taken to our techniques, what we're trying to do on the edge, and going back to kind of what Seth was talking about in this front, the wide 9 technique. Part of that is the defensive ends are a critical component of setting the edge of the defense. So you're responsible for setting the edge. So it's not pass rush first. You have to be able to read your run pass key, be able to play physical, be able to play with technique, and set the edge of the defense. And I'd say from Will's perspective, his playing strength looks like he's going to be able to set the edge. He plays with power, and he's nonstop in his motor. And candidly, he doesn't really say much. He's more of a doer, more about action. And I think he's been what we thought he was going to be. He's been very consistent. He's been that way his whole career. So it'll be interesting to see once we get to training camp, once we're able to go at a quicker pace, does that continue to carry over? But the right mindset, the right work ethic, I'd say overall the rookie class, they've had a good attitude, they've had a good mindset, they've had a good work ethic, they've said less, and they've tried to do more, which is really what you want to do as a younger player. So I think we're pleased with where Will is at this point. He's worked on both sides of the line, both right and left. We've worked him a little bit inside, too, and some of the third down stuff. Does that mean he's going to end up in there? I think there's going to be certain packages probably that we have in passing situations, second to third down or in third down, where you might try to get your best rushers or your most athletic group on the field. So it's been great to work with. I'm excited about what training camp's going to look like, not only for him, but I think the rookie class in general.
No, as I was smiling as you were talking about the with Will Anderson learning this defense, but also yes, that it's incorrect to say that they're going hell bent for leather into the backfield every time.
Some do though, and I'd say we've had examples where it's a run play and the end is going up the field, so the defense is displaced. So the gap integrity, you lost that, so it puts more stress either on the defensive tackle or the linebacker at the second level. So defensive football, one player can actually alter what happens to the rest of the 10 that are remaining. So that's where defense is about 11 players doing the right thing on a play-to-play basis, being in the right spot, and it's the same thing offensively. It's everybody tries to make football about one player, and you need good players. Nobody's saying you don't need good players, but it's about a collective effort. It's about everybody doing the right thing, because if you're out of position for one play, it's a difference between a 2-yard gain and potentially a 20 to 30-yard gain that's in the secondary, and then you're putting stress on the safeties to make the tackle.
Yeah. That's where, and when I had probably created the same cut up that DeMeco has shown to Will Anderson of Nick Bosa, basically doing really, really smart things from that alignment where one guy might just rocket into the backfield, but where Nick Bosa understands I'm getting cracked down on by a wide receiver, or they're trying to trap me, or what have you, and that's where the Will Anderson part, Sean asked me this yesterday, and you gave a better answer, but Sean asked me, what could you tell during this time of year when you're not really having contact? I think a lot of it is that stuff, right? The smart, understanding, diagnosing what the offense is trying to do to you, so you're not getting out of position. And some rookies just don't show that initially.
No, and not that you've asked about him, Sean or Seth, but I would say Toa has really been, I would say, pretty advanced relative to his understanding of what's going on the defensive side of the ball, which going back to even 2 years ago when we drafted Christian. So Christian and Henry played next to one another that 2021 season. Mm-hmm. But Henry's come in terms of understanding, awareness, instincts, communication, being able to make adjustments, being able to anticipate, being able to get a run pass key. I mean, there's been plenty of plays where the quarterback is either under center or in a gun, and he's pointing to the air saying, okay, it's probably a pass. Not that the whole stadium doesn't know, but you're looking for some keys to give you an inclination about what could happen on the play. So going back to kind of what we talked about with the rookies in general, they've really worked their ass off. taken the coaching, they've improved. And I'd say Henry looks like he has a pretty good understanding of concepts and overall awareness. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that manifests itself a little bit more once we get to camp.
Well, yeah, because that's the one thing with this defense. Those, I mean, you could say this about every defense. If you don't have a smart linebackers, you're kind of screwed. But it does feel like there's extra pressure on these guys at times to really get those run-pass keys nailed and quick, because they've got some responsibilities above and beyond what other defenses do. No, absolutely. It's one thing if you're a defensive tackle, when you're in close proximity with the offensive lineman, and you might be saying, okay, the weight on his right foot, okay, or he's lighter on his right hand. You in your mindset are probably thinking, okay, maybe I have an inclination, understanding, maybe more run pass. From a linebacker perspective, if you take one step the wrong way and then you have to match 3 on a deep over, so if you're late to react and you're out of position, it could be the difference between making a play or giving up a big play. So defense is very reactionary, as you know, and the more you can anticipate and have an understanding, going back to what I said earlier, what the hell's going on the offensive side of the ball. If you don't know your assignment or what you're doing on defense or what the scheme is, like, you shouldn't even be on a field. So once you have that in place, then it's about, is there some kind of key and diagnose that I can see that's going to help me get in a proper position in terms of my landmarks and my drops? I mean, the depth, the linebacker depth in the under coverage as part of the defense is important. So linebackers you really want to play it from top down so you can force the ball, and DeMeco calls it the kill zone, where you're trying to force them to throw the ball short and then rally to the football and get as many hats in that spot as possible. So it's been a lot of fun just to watch. It's different than kind of what maybe I grew up with in terms of the front structure, but the principles sort of remain the same. Mm-hmm. Kill zone. All right.
Yeah, kill zone,
okay.
Swarm.
Yeah.
Put that on the list. Miko terms. Nick Caserio joining us in studio. So we talked about Will Anderson. As far as C.J. Stroud goes, we get the reports from camp about the throws in practice. Led him on a 2-minute drill to a touchdown, threw an interception, this and that. What's something that you can tell us about C.J. that maybe we don't get to see, but you get to see about how he's been doing so far?
Yeah, I'd say from the start of sort of OTAs to the end point here, he's certainly made a lot of progress. I'd say the quarterbacks in general have all made a lot of progress. They have all had their plays where they've had a lot of good throws and a lot of good decisions. Really what you're trying to do is, do they understand the concept of the play? Are they staying true to their fundamentals? Do they not make the same mistake twice? And I would say from CJ's perspective, there's been examples good in those areas, and there's been some examples where, wait a minute, okay, let's go back and take another look at that. But he's a very inquisitive. I think Matt Burke had a comment about, and it was interesting because I kind of stand in the back of practice, and the 2 plays that CJ alluded to with Matt, or Matt was alluding to, they were well done by the defense. I think one of the things the defense has actually done a good job of is the use of the disguise, and they're trying to kind of marry the coverages together. So, and if it's something that you haven't seen or you're not comfortable with, then you may put the ball in a spot maybe where it shouldn't go. But for him to go up to Matt and say, hey, talk to me a little bit more about that, this goes back to what I said earlier. The more on your respective side of the ball you have an understanding of what's going on the other side, that's ultimately what's going to separate, how good of a player you may or may not be. Everybody's going to have certain skills that can win to playing a position. Playing the quarterback is about good decision-making. It's about throwing the ball on time, throwing the ball accurately, and being able to get the ball into some areas in some tight spots. So that's what playing the quarterback is. And then being able to execute in critical situations. Game's going to come down to third down in the red area. So in all those areas, he's certainly made some progress. There's some things that he can continue to work on. I'm sure there's some things that he learned in the spring that he hadn't seen before. So when we get back in a training camp, try to build on those things. And I would say we haven't talked about this yet, but I think when we practice with Miami and New Orleans, those are going to be 2 really good opportunities to work against the different scheme kind of before we get to Baltimore in a real live setting.
What does the changing landscape of preseason football? You've got one fewer game, one less game than you used to, and so many teams just aren't playing their starters. Does it alter your plan for how you develop a rookie quarterback, knowing that he's just not going to see as many starters in the preseason?
No, it's a good question. I think what you have to figure out is, how do we want to build a schedule? How do we want to structure practice? What's the best way to optimize getting any player ready for the first opportunity against Baltimore? So the benefit of the joint practice is, you know this, the pace of practice just naturally is going to increase. So the first week, everybody's going to be juiced up. Everybody's going to be excited. Everybody's going to be flying around, got pads on. Great. Okay, then after that second week, it'll be, all right, kind of ready maybe for something a little bit different. You know, we'll have the first preseason game against New England, which is an opportunity there. And then the following week when we come back, we're going to have, I think, 2 days of practice against Miami. And if you're working with the right group, you can control the environment, but you can make it as live and realistic as possible to try to simulate what's going to happen in the game. So how we structure practice, what we do in practice, what do we need to do ultimately to get the players, 2 things, ready for week 1 and give us the best opportunity to evaluate the team and the players so we can make the right decisions when it comes to putting the final roster together.
Nick Caserio with us in studio, Texans general manager. The Malik Collins contract extension was reported yesterday. I don't know if the team's officially announced it yet, but reported. The other 2 big extensions that you've given out this offseason on the offensive line, got Laramie signed up and Shaq Mason. All contract extensions that are kind of in the trenches. Is that a coincidence, or is that any sort of indicator as to how you want to build this football team?
Yeah, in the end, everything starts inside out. So you got to be good in the front of both sides of the ball. So whatever you think gives you the best opportunity to do that. So, you know, Shaq was a player when we traded for him. We knew he was going to last year of his contract, you know, and I would say contract discussions, especially this time of year, and we've talked about this in different points of the show, we're very open, we're very flexible, we're very adaptable, and we'll entertain it at any point. Sometimes they come to fruition a little bit quicker than others. Some take a little bit longer, but those are, I would say, players in kind of similar stages of their career. You know, Shaq's maybe a little bit older, but, you know, Shaq's still a younger player. Mm-hmm. And we just felt like that made a lot of sense. A lot of those players were going into the last year of their deals. And we have several other players on our team in a similar situation going into the last year of their deal. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to do anything before the season starts. I think we'll entertain some things, and if it makes sense for us to do, and really everybody has to feel comfortable on both sides. These are never easy. There's no hard and fast rule. Okay, we have to have it done by this date. But at some point, when you do a contract kind of before the end, there has to be some give and take, and we understand that, but you're also respectful of the other side's position. So sometimes there's a mutual understanding. Sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you're not interested in the player. It doesn't mean that you don't value the player. It just means sometimes it doesn't come together. But there'll be opportunity maybe at some other point along the way. So, you know, those are 3 players that we felt good about making it, and that's why we made the decision that we did.
You had mentioned that Henry To'oTo'o is doing very well by rookie standards. Is there anybody else that jumped out to you?
I'd say overall that group, they've made progress in their own right. So I wouldn't say anybody in particular. I know we're trying to go through kind of a singular analysis of the rookie class at this point.
Yeah.
But, and I'd say we
need letter grades, in GPA format.
Can we use the summer school pass fail?
Let's do a miniature circle of trust for the rookie class.
Circle of trust.
We see. Yeah, if you're not cutting any rookies, at least we're good to go. Or any draft picks.
No, not right now.
One guy that a lot of people, I'm intrigued with this guy because of his play at TCU, but also because of kind of his trajectory as a player. Dylan Horton, the defensive end, who was a strong safety in high school, moved to outside linebacker, then outside linebacker / defensive end. So he's gained, I don't know how much he weighs right now, but I know he gained.
You just want to talk about defensive linemen. I love it.
Well, I mean, it is like everything you said about playing defensive end in this scheme, or defensive line in this scheme. There's I guess there's different challenges or what have you, but Dylan Horton could be a vital part of this team. What's it like evaluating a guy like that who really came into his own this last year, and that included kind of putting on body mass over the last couple of years?
No, we talked about this kind of around the draft. He has an interesting story, his background, and I'd say his weight fluctuations have been fairly significant, and not through any fault of his own. It was just more philosophically they wanted him at a certain weight. He's about in that 55 to 60 range right now, which is probably a good weight for him, but it has good length. He has kind of sneaky quickness. He has, good short space quickness and agility, good attitude, really receptive to coaching. He's learning techniques that he hadn't either done or learned before. It's not anybody's fault. It's not an indictment about a program. It's just everybody's kind of asked to do different things. So It's been interesting. He's flashed at different points, so it'll be interesting to kind of see what he looks like kind of when the bullets are kind of flying alive here. Great kid, good attitude, very quiet. I'd say this group overall is very workmanlike. They don't really say a lot, which is what you want. You know, when you're a younger player, when you come onto any team, regardless of where you're picked or where you're drafted or what your role is, say less, do more. And just have the right attitude and just look for improvement on a day-to-day basis. So I'd say Dylan certainly falls into that category. And his story is interesting. I think he's in the right spot playing defensive end. So I don't think we're going to – and we work all of the rookies. Not that he's going to be playing on punt protection on the interior to punt team. But for somebody that's never gone in there and been in punt protection, he actually has done a decent job. So what that says is – looks like he has an understanding of football, understands concepts, and if he had to go in there, again, you're not going to put your defensive end with the first group of punt team, but at some point, if you lose a player or two during the game and you have to finish the game, does the player know what to do? Do you have enough confidence in him to do the right thing? So, it'll be interesting to kind of see how he progresses once training camp starts.
That is, honestly, I feel like for some guys, that was my experience too. Your welcome to the NFL moment is when all of a sudden you're running down on special teams in the preseason, and maybe you haven't since like your freshman year in college, and it's like the level of complexity and the speed and everything, like the need to have your head on a swivel is just so overwhelming that if a guy can play punt coverage well as a rookie, and especially as a defensive lineman, I do feel like that's got to show something about football IQ, right?
There's as much communication on the punt team as there is probably offensively or defensively, and things happen fast. So Is it 6 up, 7 up? They pull somebody out. They shift the front. It's overload. They twist. So your ability to get your head and eyes in the right spot are important. And if you can anticipate and understand where your help is, and it goes back to the same thing. Are you using the right technique? Goes back to your fundamentals. Everything in football, forget about the position, starts with your fundamentals. So do you have good fundamentals? Do you have a good base? Good fundamentals are going to lead to good football. Bad fundamentals are going to lead to bad football. So, and this goes back to, I'd say, DeMeco's philosophy is being a good fundamental team. And the emphasis on the fundamentals, your first step, going back to the linebacker discussion. Are you making the right read? Are you making the right first step? And this is in the spring where you can focus on those things because you have more time and there's less contact. So even in a team period, you can work on your technique and putting yourself in the right position. And that's what we can evaluate. And those that do it, okay, gives you some sense. All right, he has an understanding. He can apply the concepts. A guy that makes the same mistake or doesn't do it, then, okay, we have to go back and figure out a way. How do we get this player to do the right thing on a more consistent basis?
Well, that was one thing, and I used to talk about this before you ever got here, Nick. So this isn't asking you about the Patriots because of you personally, but you have experience with this. Like the thing that always impressed me about the Patriots was that you will see guys in week one that, like, I'd watch the Texans play the Patriots early on, and I'd be like, oh, that defense just isn't that good this year for the Patriots, or that defensive line is trash. And then all of a sudden you watch the Patriots in week 7, and you're like, oh, these are different guys. Like, it's a different, like, they've actually improved, almost like it's a rate that a high school team would improve. And like, what is the, and you don't always see that in the NFL. So like, as a GM, is there a different art to evaluating guys in season and exactly where they are and where they might be? I think a lot of times people get fixated on just, okay, you have training camp, you figure out who a guy is, but there's more development to be had.
Absolutely. I think it's a great observation. How you practice, what you do in practice is important during the course of the year. Let's face it, training camp is your best opportunity to work on your fundamentals. You do one-on-ones, offense and defensive line. You do receiver, defensive back, one-on-one drills. And the focus is, it's on the route or whatever the skill is, but you're focusing on, are you doing it with the right technique, with the proper technique? Once the season's over, there's always a propensity to think, okay, we put our fundamentals aside. We just have to get ready for the scheme. Okay, we're playing Pittsburgh this week. All right, what are they doing in all three phases? You still, during the course of the year, if you're committed to it, in whether it's how you set up your team run periods, let's say going back, one of the things that we did a lot of one-on-one work in season. So you can control the periods. It's not like you have to do 15, 20 minutes, but if you have 5-6 minutes where you can work on route running technique, positioning on the receiver, playing with the right leverage, all those types of things, and then you practice them and you go back and watch them and correct them, and then you see the application on the field, then you can make progress as an overall team. So I think to your point, Seth, that did happen, on a fair amount of basis. How you start is one thing, and you really have to kind of break the season up into sort of quadrants. The first 4 weeks, you're still trying to figure out what you have as a team. And then once you get through that period, all right, what are the things that we do well? What are some of the things that we can work on? And then if there's something that you need to get fixed or there's an emphasis point, then you have to practice it. So the only way you're going to get better is by practicing. And we've talked about, one of the phrases that we had is practice execution equals game reality. So if you practice it with the right technique and do it the right way in practice, it gives you an opportunity to do it properly in the game. So in the end, it goes back to your fundamentals. So how much you emphasize fundamentals will typically translate into what you see on the field. And you see it, you see it all the time. There's a lot of bad fundamentals that take place on the field. If you want to be a good fundamental team, then you really have to be conscious of working on it on a regular basis.
You're listening to KILT and KILT HD2 on Odyssey Station. This is normally where I ask, hey, you still got some more time, but we've got you sequestered.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if I was going to have to do like an ad read while I was here or something like
Oh,
that.
yes. You can do mine.
Good.
Yeah.
Is that who you have? Let's see.
I got mine coming up with Mattress Mac. Nick Caserio and Mattress Mac. Yeah, you can do Max picks with Mattress Mac.
No gambling in the NFL.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, good question. Okay.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah.
right,
No,
awesome.
this is actually a question I had written down, Nick. I did want to ask you about that. Like, I think we know
it's a serious topic.
It's a serious topic.
Yeah.
No, we know what's going on with some other teams, and the league is being pretty vigilant about this, and I think rightfully so. I think people are curious, what's the education process for the Houston Texans on this?
You know what? We actually had a meeting about this yesterday where you just need to reinforce. I think what you want to do is make sure the players understand what the rules are. Sometimes they can be a little bit nuanced, and when you get a PowerPoint of 80 slides, there's a lot of minutia in there. Just figuring out what the players need to know. In the end, it's just not worth it. If you're a player, it's just not worth it. So there's nothing tangibly that you can really gain. Okay, will you gain a few bucks here or there? Maybe, but
maybe not.
There's a reason there's as many casinos in Las Vegas, and it's not like the money is just – they're taking money from multiple people, and Vegas is designed – I've been to Vegas twice because we played Vegas this year, but Vegas is designed for you to lose. So the house always wins. But the reality is, though, it's just not worth it from a player standpoint, regardless of how big or small you think the bet might be, if it's $50 here, $100 here. I think from the league's perspective, it's really about the integrity of the game. So if you're a fan, do you trust what's going on in the field is actually, pure, and there's not something going on behind the scene that could lead to an outcome that I would say not everybody is pleased about. Mm-hmm. So it's communication. It's make sure you treat it seriously because it's a serious topic, and it's just not worth. Now, I would say sometimes the league puts the players in a tough spot because there's some mixed messaging here. When you're promoting sports books and MGM and DraftKings, great companies, and it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of excitement around that, and it's really more for the fans. But as a player, you have to be disciplined enough just to make the right decision. And DeMeco's talked about this from day one. I'd say specific to the Houston Texans, it's about protecting the team. So are you doing everything in your power to protect the team? And if you're not, then you're putting yourself and our team at risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where I guess, and it's a kind of a, I don't want to say it blindsided you guys in the NFL in general, but it's like a new vice you have to worry about, right? Because it wasn't,
Sure.
Gambling on apps and everything wasn't common at all back when it was illegal almost everywhere. And now all of a sudden it's, you've always known that you have guys might have alcohol issues you have to worry about. And now there's guys that might have gambling issues that they don't even realize they have until
and it's
all
look,
this
it's half jokingly,
available.
but tongue it's a vice. Gambling is a vice.
Yeah.
And some people can pull themselves away. You do it one time, all right, you got your giggles and it's time to move on. Mm-hmm. But the further down the rabbit hole you go, it's just a little bit harder potentially to walk away.
Nick Caserio, Texans GM, in studio with us. J.J. Watt announced earlier this week he's going into the Ring of Honor Week 4 when you guys play Pittsburgh. Is there a J.J. Watt story you can share with us from a New England perspective in prepping for J.J. Watt back in the day?
he was a freaking massive pain in the ass just to play against every time we played. We knew if you didn't allocate significant resources to him, he was going to wreck the game. Like, he had the ability to literally wreck the game on a lot of different levels. And I think, and I was actually talking to DeMeco about this the other day. One of the things about J.J. that people lose sight of, he was as difficult in a running game as he was as a rusher, and really it was on the backside of running plays. So that's where you're kind of like, oh, it's probably not that big of a deal. Well, yeah, it is, because if he's in a 2-eye and you're saying, well, the guard's going to be able to cut him off on the backside and we'll just run away from him, well, you were actually better trying to run at him to try to get at least multiple bodies where you could limit the space. So, I mean, we actually, I think when I was in New England, we were playing here during the week. We're like, oh, we'll be able to get him. And then we try to run our weak side zone play away from him. And the mother effer gets 3 yards in the backfield, and it's 2nd and 13 or 14. So, I mean, that was JJ. I mean, we had a massive amount of respect and appreciation just on the other side for JJ and his ability to wreck the game. It was really two things that you don't really associate with defensive linemen or productive defensive players. Everybody wants to talk about sacks and everything else, but it was his ability to affect the running game on the backside and his ability to get his hands in the passing lane and bat as many balls as he could. You just don't see that, but he had rare, I would say, size, length, and overall. You're talking about a guy 6'5", 300 pounds, ran 4'8", or whatever he ran, with 34, 35-inch arms. So, and he was you have to be a very aware, instinctive player. So when you're in a stance and your eyes are down, and then when it's passed and you're trying to mirror the quarterback and see what the hell's going on, that's not easy to do. That takes a lot of skill and a lot of awareness and a lot of just overall it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And
there's a hand-eye coordination to it that you don't really think of. It just looks like, oh, you're getting a hand over there. But like the guys that are good at it are actually
it's calculated.
The ball to their
it's
really
planned. And he had as many pass breakups as some defensive backs in the league.
Yes.
So look, this honor is very well deserved. He deserves everything that he received. When we kind of, we moved on there, whenever that was, when I got here in February, he and I had, actually a 30, 40-minute conversation, and he was great. I mean, we were pretty honest with one another. And I told him, look, I have a massive amount of respect and admiration for what you've done as a player. And I think what he's meant to this city on a human level, on a personal level, like you just can't, not everybody can reduplicate that. So everything that he's received, he deserves and he earns, and it's certainly a great honor for him and his family to be able to recognize with something, something of his nature.
Absolutely.
So you and DeMeco have been getting to know each other. I always tried to figure this out because in the NFL, a lot of times there's almost like a competition amongst coaches to see who's going to get there earliest and stay the latest. It's almost like who hates their family the most competition. But so what do you? But when a new guy comes in, you two are both you're both at the head of your respective departments, and there's a certain work ethic that's expected. But you got to be smart and rational about it. And how do you establish all right, I don't want this guy to think I'm a punk, but I also don't want to be here at 3 a.m. How'd you fall into those schedules?
That's funny.
Because I would be there at 3 a.m. I'm too insecure. I'm going to show up every day at 3 and then slowly work my way until 5 a.m.
Nothing good happens at 3 o'clock at night when you're on the streets or the road. So I think really you just have to be who you are and be consistent. So some people are morning people. Some people, their schedule is a little bit different. I think what we've tried to emphasize and what DeMeco's tried to emphasize with the staff, get your work done however you need to do it and in the most efficient. Try to be efficient with your time, be resourceful with your time. So there's been times where his car's been there first. There's been times when my car's been there first. So it's not like we're leaving any notes to each other like, hey, nice of you to get here this afternoon. So.
Yeah, I guess there's also that part too where the first few weeks you want to be sure he's not that type of guy. Is this a keep score type of guy?
That's funny. It's funny. Nick Caserio in studio with us. So what's going on for Father's Day? This weekend?
That's a good question. I think that'll be up to my daughters. Okay. So I'm sure they'll have something.
Do they spoil you on Father's Day?
They do. Okay. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I have great women in my life.
Yes.
So including our dog, Lily. So
okay.
She's a big part of the family.
Nice.
She likes to jump in the pool kind of unsolicited, even though we don't want her to go in the pool.
Oh, yeah, that's
trying
a
to stay
nightmare.
Cool. But no, we're trying to get some time actually with my wife. And I think this is a good opportunity for us over the summer to get as much time together. And it's really about them. During the year, it's about Dad, and they understand kind of the job and everything that entails. But, I'm pretty low-key, pretty low maintenance. I mean, when I'm away from football, it's about my wife and it's about my girls, and that's where the focus is. I don't have a lot of hobbies, so
what do you have?
Other than following the stock market, which I know everybody loses their minds when they hear that.
Well, no, if you can actually follow it like somewhat dispassionately, that's impressive.
Yeah.
You have to take the emotion out of finance.
Yeah. Well, that's a test for you, right? Like to make the unemotional decisions.
Yes.
What? Okay, so are you the type of person where, because I know you've got a very good routine and you stay task oriented and all that. Like when you have some time here now where you might just be taking some time off, do you end up like having a flood of ideas, or at least various things that you might want to try out or test? Are you carrying a notebook around with you?
I actually have a card, and when I'm reading, you kind of use it as my bookmark. So if there's an idea or something in the book, or if I'm thinking of something kind of stream of consciousness, I'll just make myself a note. So, but I'm not walking around with my backpack with a notebook trying to figure out like a bunch of new things to do.
That was a legit question on the show, actually.
like this time of year, you might, like, guys in their off time, you read a book or something, and all of a sudden you get a different perspective on things. Have you ever had any like big paradigm shifting revelations or anything in July?
No, and we're kind of laughing about it, but actually I think one of the things that you've seen over however many years, and it just kind of transcends just sport, the leadership paradigm is changing, and kind of what the emphasis is, and just from people in leadership positions, the importance of, I would say, number one, the connectivity, number two, just your ability to empower and engage your workforce and employees. And if there's things that we can do to help them, to elevate them and empower them, because we're very blessed to be in the positions that we're in, but part of our responsibility is to be able to give back to others and help them in some capacity, so that when they move on to something else or do, have a different role, that you've given them the best opportunity for success. So I think I'd say finance and leadership, I'm intrigued by that and very fascinated by that. A lot of this is behavior science. So just trying to educate yourself or myself about that, and what are some of the things that we can do, that I can do, both individually and professionally, to grow and, maybe enhance some of the things that we're doing. So I've tried to be kind of a curious individual and just try to be, learn as much as I possibly can about different topics. Hopefully I've grown, and hopefully I'm able to give back and do the right thing by the people I'm around on a day-to-day basis. That's cool.
Nick Caserio, Texans GM, in studio with us. Okay, one other thing. What position?
I can talk about the smack-off.
2 weeks from today.
Jeff in Richmond, RSVP.
Did he? Okay, so you're keeping track. All right, now I got to call. Like this year, I was kind of pondering. I'm like, man, it's kind of like a homework assignment. Maybe I take the year off. Now I don't want to disappoint Nick Caserio, so I got to be in it. I was joking with Seth last night. I'm like, I think I may have artificial intelligence write my smack off call this year and just see how it goes.
ChatGPT.
AI, yeah, that's what.
Most of my opinions in the last 3 weeks have been ChatGPT.
And actually, in all seriousness, I'm going to probably spend some time with the technology over the summer. Just it sounds like it's pretty fascinating. In all seriousness,
yeah, it's so far, honestly, it's got its strengths and its drawbacks. Like, there's some times where you can be like, okay, if you wanted to be lazy, you could sound like a really boring, disingenuous person with this stuff. But if you use it to augment, and I kind of use it in reverse. I'll take really good articles and have
kind of reverse engineer it,
outline it for me, like, so I can kind of like bullet point it and everything. But to organize my thoughts.
Sure.
But yeah, it's really, you tinker with it. It's a lot of fun.
Or you had it generating limericks on the show the other day.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it won't write dirty limericks.
No, it won't.
If that's what you were hoping for. Sorry, Nick.
ChatGPT. Ooh, sorry.
Yeah, basically like, oh, sorry, I'm better than you, Seth.
Yeah. It won't make any limericks about Nantucket. This is crazy. Nick Caserio, Texans GM. No, the other thing I was going to ask you, Seth and I were wondering earlier in the show, what position did you play in baseball when you were playing baseball?
Oh, great question. So when I was younger, I was a shortstop, pitcher, third base.
Okay.
And then I transitioned to center field about, I want to say, in high school.
Yeah.
and I loved it. So I know we got to go. Everybody's like, get these guys off the air. But
no, they're not.
In high school, our field, we didn't have a fence. So it was just a wide-ass open field. There was a lot of space. So you had your initial positioning, but you had the ability to kind of get to the ball on either side of you. So you had a lot of freedom. So, I wasn't very good, but I tried to track as many plays down as possible. And it's interesting, now that you think about it, playing center field, you're kind of seeing the game from, top down. It's kind of how I watch practice. Like, you kind of see everything in front of you. So I transition, and I do everything right-handed other than hit a baseball. So the only thing I do left-handed, I bat lefty and hit a baseball, and I play golf right-handed. Yeah. I know it's all effed up. People are like, man, this guy's got a screw.
No, that's like Jake Myers. Jake Myers throws left, bats right. Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, I was infield, and I eventually infield pitcher, and then I transitioned to center field, and I loved it.
Yeah, okay. Shortstop was my guess.
I had, right before, as Sean was asking that question, I had ChatGPT write a smack off in the style of Sean the Cavlinasian.
Oh, you did?
This is how you're supposed to start off, Sean.
Okay, let's hear it.
Yo, what's up, Smack Off fans? It's your boy, the Cavlinasian, bringing the heat like a habanero on steroids. Today I've got
that sounds nothing like one of his calls. I've heard them.
Keep going.
Today I've got a message for all the contenders stepping up to the plate. You better have your A game, because I'm about to serve up a verbal feast you won't forget.
Definitely would get run off the show.
I would get run.
No question.
I would get run.
No question.
So now that's 3.5. I only get 20 4.0s per month, and I'm not going to waste it on that one. So just be careful, Nick.
Yeah.
Don't make any life-changing memos or anything using ChatGPT.
Yep. Hey, man, we enjoyed this. You coming in studio. We got to do this again sometime.
I appreciate it.
The new kid on the block thinks he's got the juice. Let me tell you something, my friend. I've been slinging smack since before you could tie your own shoes. That's our parting message to you.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Always good to be with you.
You too, Nick. Appreciate it. We'll see you at training camp for sure. All right, that's Nick Caserio, Texans general manager, joining us in studio.